right, and now Tim and I are here with John Paul. Is it Rhinemiller?
It is Rhinemiller, yes.
Rhinemiller. John, what's up?
Good job. You didn't screw that up, Mike.
I don't think I've screwed any of them up yet this time.
It's right how it's spelled too. I actually get typically Ryan Miller, like my first name is Ryan, so everybody typically that's how I get it screwed up typically. So it's all good.
Nice. Yeah. Well, tell us a little about yourself, John. What's your background in animation and games and all that?
Sure. So did kind of the brick and mortar aspect of school. Went to SCAD and studied animation there. After I got out, I landed basically right out of there. I applied while they were there and kind of interviewed while I was at SCAD to Rhythm and Hughes, and got into an apprenticeship program over at Rhythm, and was fortunate enough to head out there and get accepted to that, and spent a month kind of, it was almost like an intern or like an on-the-job interview type deal, you know, doing kind of cycles a bit, and then they would, you know, bump you up to a shot on the film, and you had a mentor, and so I kind of felt, you know, pretty lucky to have entered something like that with some of my fellow classmates and got some on-the-job experience in film, which was great. I got hired on after that and worked on, you know, I think one film, Alvin and the Chipmunks, two. I'm sure both of you guys have seen that. Right on.
Yes, that's why it's on repeat all the time at my house.
So I saw that, or I worked on that. That was my first kind of gig in the industry, and as VFX goes, they kind of lay everybody off after the films, and I picked up a small job at Image Metrics. It used to be in Santa Monica there, and I worked there for about 10 months doing some facial motion capture stuff, mainly on Red Dead Redemption.
Okay.
So that was my first kind of intro into the game world. So I worked on some other smaller, you know, stuff, some Harry Potter stuff, and I think we were doing like Warhammer stuff and that kind of thing. But that was my first kind of intro into games and mocap in general. So it was pretty fun. It was a great experience. I got to start to understand how pipeline works in games and all that. Then I went back to Rhythm for 2 more years, and over that spanned, you know, 2 or 3 more years, and worked on like 4 films. And then I took a job at Vicarious Visions, where I currently am. And it was my first development, like real development studio. So, you know, first time kind of getting in there and doing a development from kind of prototype, hitting all the milestones, all the green lights and all that stuff. And when I got there, I actually was hired on as a cinematic animator underneath the lead, and when I got there, she gave her 2 weeks notice, and they didn't really have any other cinematic animators. They didn't really have a cinematic department or a pipeline at the time. So, you know, the game director pulled me aside, and he was like, well, there's obviously this gaping hole here. You know, this is what we want to try to do, and how do you feel about kind of filling that role or taking on that role and see how you do? And so I basically took over the cinematic department, which there wasn't really any. It was just me, and you know, they paired me up with some engineers and some tech artists, and we started to develop a pipeline. You know, as we got work, we hired on animators, got a layout and camera guy, and kind of just started a full-fledged cinematic department. And I've been building that over the past 4 or 5 years, basically, that I've been there.
Wow. Yep.
So that's kind of the quick and dirty.
So now that would have lined up. You got there for at what point with Skylanders? Would have.
So Spyro's Adventure hadn't even been released at that point. Okay. And Toys for Bob was working on Spyro's Adventure, and they also did Giants, and we were basically prototyping. They were already in production with, I think, Giants at the time, and so we were working on Swap Force and prototyping that out. That's really what I started with and got to see. And then recently we just launched Superchargers was my most recent. That was back in September.
Cool.
Yep.
So I think what you know, obviously, you know, there's lots of, you know, cinematic departments and talks, and I think what got me really excited about yours was the idea of how many characters you're having to juggle, especially once you start getting things like swapping characters and maintaining characters from previous games and new ones and stuff. I think that's really interesting. So, yeah, I think I imagine that only adds an additional challenge to the how do we make cinematics for this.
Absolutely, and it's a challenge I think throughout the entire franchise, and not just in cinematics. Gameplay animation as well is super challenging each year, trying to bring forward the new innovation from the previous game, and so trying to understand that as we move forward, what that means for the franchise is it's pretty important. But also building that technology within our pipelines as well. So sometimes that works, trying to bring all of these Skylanders in the world that we're trying to create from scratch again, and also having it actually be cohesive, actually trying to understand, year in and year out what the narrative is, where it kind of left off, are you kind of looking at it as a series, and each year we kind of progressively, bring forward new characters and new, non-playable characters, and what does that actual world look like? So each year it's definitely a challenge, and we always have to think about and work around the core hook. Typically, like a Swap Force character was our hook that year, and this last year was Supercharged, so we obviously had to work a little bit around vehicles and kind of start to work that into the transition of the narrative and all that. So definitely, absolutely challenging, both I think from a creative standpoint and from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
That's nice. I mean, it's always nice to have a job where you feel like every day you might not know exactly how you're going to do what you have to do. So I actually
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, too, is each year it's new characters, and new characters that have never been invented before. That's, I think,
nice.
The one great thing about this brand in general is just the sheer amount of creativity that actually happens every single title. It's like creating a brand new game from scratch every time, because of the fact that we are coming up with a new hook each time, a new innovation, and new characters.
Nice.
That's crazy.
That sounds pretty cool.
How many minutes of cinematics did you have on Superchargers?
So that was the first year we actually took all of the cinematics in-house and we did them within our engine. All the previous years we had kind of farmed out the pre-rendered stuff, but we had got to a point in our pipeline and within our engine that I felt that it was better for us and more cost-effective and better creatively for us to try to bring all that in-house. So this last game, we did a total of around 49 minutes, I think. 49 minutes, all keyframe animation.
Over the course of, how long was the development cycle for that?
So the development cycle was 2 years total for the game, but we probably had, I think, a full year, maybe a little bit less of animating, I think.
That's a lot to do in a year still. I mean, that's on top of everything else, right? So
yes, yep, it's a ton to do, and like I'm saying, like everything is in our engine, so we have to make sure that everything fits within our engine. We all of the technical stuff and the technical support and the hiccups that kind of come along with that aspect of trying to fit everything into a game engine is part of that. And so when I talk about what I'll be talking about this year at the boot camp is just figuring out like what that even looks like. How does that even happen? Both from a technical standpoint of trying to make sure that we're pushing the bar quality wise each year. But also being able to fit that tech within our engine, because we have a proprietary engine, so we're constantly evolving that as well. But sometimes they pair up, and it's great. It's a great marriage of like, hey, we just developed this awesome tech for the game, and we're like, awesome, we've been waiting for that, or it's like we would love to develop this for you, but the rest of the game isn't gonna benefit from it. So where does that actually lie on the plate?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good balance.
Yeah, sounds fun. Sounds challenging, but those are the best kinds of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now is this your second GDC? I remember we met a couple years ago out there.
Yeah. The first time, this is only my second GDC because I was kind of a bit more in the film world before, so I was going to SIGGRAPH a bit more than I was kind of GDC. And I went 2 years ago when Swap Force launched, and I did a talk within Activision there. They do an Activision summit every year at GDC, and kind of all the Activision studios get together and chat about what all the happenings are. So I did a presentation, pretty different than what I'll be doing here, but but it was kind of my first stage to present, in a fashion to game industry vets and people that have been in the industry for a while, and kind of just put my experiences out there and kind of what I've been through. And, going to your guys, going to the roundtables and everything at GDC, it was probably one of the best experiences that I've had.
Awesome. I always love hearing that.
Yeah. Seriously, I've been to a lot of conferences, and I think just going into the roundtables was the diverse amount of people that were in that room, from leads to teachers to students to everybody that was in that room. It was such a great conversation, and I just felt that like everything was, it was just, I don't know, it was nothing like I had really experienced before in a conference.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can keep that up this year.
I'm sure you guys have a good turnout for that. So, and it seems that GDC is only getting more and more popular as games really become more and more popular.
Yeah, GDC is a monster at this point.
Yeah.
It's huge, and we're excited that through the boot camp and through the roundtables and all that stuff, that animation's starting to get a seat at the table, and we're getting to find people like you to get to sort of talk about their experiences, so that we can try and share how everyone's doing this stuff and kind of learn from each other's mistakes and learn from our successes as well. So.
Absolutely, because part of what I want to talk about in this talk that I'm giving, creating the narrative for the over 300 plus characters is really some of the stuff that we failed at too. It's not awesome. Really about like I don't really want to get up there and just be like, hey, everything was great, it was awesome. That's how game development is.
Right.
Because that's...
No, the failures are good. The failures, I always love when people talk about what didn't work, because then, part of it is, oh, I screwed that up too. I feel good that I'm not the only one. And then there's also, just seeing other people's thought processes are really great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seeing what actually didn't work, and, where we would have went or how we would have done. And, there's definitely a decent amount of failures, I think, throughout the life cycle of any development. So, why not share some of that stuff? So I've been trying to actually incorporate more of that as I, and have been solidifying everything. I've really been trying to try to, just show some of the learnings that we had, both successful and not so much.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, John, thanks for just taking a little bit of time talking to us about what you got planned, and we're excited to see the full talk in March.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to go out and be part of the roundtable. So I thank you guys for letting me be a part of it, and hopefully somebody can come away with some insightful stuff.
Definitely.
Nice.
Definitely. Well, we will see you in March.
Okay.